Welcome back to another episode on Life Notes with Peris. And I never wished that I would one day co-parent. That wasn't my dream. But you know what? It happened. And sometimes we look at co-parenting and wonder, what are some of the challenges? Should I have just taken the responsibilities alone? Should I have snatched my children from that person that I felt really hurt me? Or should I just accept it? And today, we dive into co-parenting. What is the emotional toll? What are the challenges? Is it right to co-parent? In my opinion. And so I look at the first stage of co-parenting. And that started when we separated, and here I am with my children in an apartment, no more in a home. And the journey starts there. And when you look at the children, by that time my children were 7 years, and they were so confused. And some of the questions that they asked me were, are we the reason as to why you have separated? They asked me questions of, is it because of us that you now separate? And it would be so painful to hear that come out of a 7-year-old child. And I told them no. And they would ask, why then? Now we don't have a home. We are now back in a rental place. And the best way I answered those questions, I held my children together and we cried together. We mourned the whole process together. It was painful. It was awful. But I had nothing to do. I cried with them. I told them it was okay. I begged them sorry. I told them I'm sorry. This is not what I wished for you. This is not what I dreamt for you. But it happened, and I'm deeply sorry. We watched each other and cried together. We cried every day until one day we stopped crying and life started being normal. And questions they asked, is it that I'll never see my father? What is all this all about? Am I ever going to see my father again? And I had to tell them, yes, you'll see your father. When you're on holiday, you'll go and see your father. And when it's not on holiday, you'll stay with mommy. And they felt at ease. They felt happy. And the reality of co-parenting is, you're the bitter person about the other person. But it's not the children. The children are not part of this game. But the thing is, at the end of it all, the question should be, should I bring up my children in a more peaceful environment, a joyous environment, a happy environment, or should I stay back and allow them to grow in an environment that shows all the wrong things about love, that shows all the wrong things about marriage? And those were the critical questions I asked myself before concluding into a parenting environment where I chose to parent the children on my own. And one of the challenges was You're coming into a co-parenting environment because you feel the other person is not going to bring up these children the right way. And sometimes you have no control over that. And I had to learn it the hard way. But I had to appreciate the fact that the moment I am with my children, I will do my best to give them the characteristics that I would love to see in them when they grow up. And like when we are both together in a marriage and we are always fighting, or we are never available, and the children will pick up bad characteristics about the both of us. And sometimes your characteristics change because of the environment you're in. The moment somebody pressurizes you, the moment somebody makes you angry, you'll turn into another piece of person. Not that that is who you are, but the environment is pushing you to be a different person. And I felt it is important that my children have that opportunity to be brought up in my space. The space whereby I say this is right and this is wrong. And the space whereby they know this is right and this is wrong. They have an environment to make their choices. But the next biggest challenge that comes with co-parenting is actually immediately after you're separated. And the feeling of how do you communicate? Remember, at this point, you haven't healed. So you're really angry. And the other person is equally angry. So you don't know how to communicate. And maybe the moment they call, you're agitated. And you feel like bursting into all kinds of words that you want to speak and say and shout and, oh my God, everything. And that is what happened in the early stages of communication. Until I realized, you know what? I'm not going back. So why are we arguing? Why are we fighting? Why are we shouting at each other? I discovered there's a better way to communicate. And sometimes the better way to communicate may not be you trying to call, oh, hello, how are you doing? Sometimes the best way to communicate is actually to block the calls from that person and strictly ensure that you just WhatsApp. And on WhatsApp, the only story that was there, and is still the only story, is things that revolve around the children. Because at the end of the day, there is nothing that we are discussing between the two of us. The only thing we need to discuss is how the children are faring on. And that calls for boundaries. Putting a boundary on what do we discuss about. And it really helped me a lot. It cooled me down. It eased my anger. And I felt I'm at peace. Because when you are living, you are looking for peace. And so you should make sure that you work towards maintaining that peace.
And the next thing that happens is financial challenges. And financial challenges, people decide to separate their way of using their finances. And of course, I had loans because I was still building a home. And so for me, I got into a financial constraint. But I thank God because I have parents that took up that and they waived some of my loans for me to stabilize. And that I really appreciate that from my dad. And the other part of finances is that sometimes we pursue upkeep, For us, we split our way of taking care of the kids. He was still the one that was paying school fees before. And so he continued to do that. And I was taking up the other activities of the house, which I still did, and I was still going to do them. The only additional money that came in was to pay rent, but I was doing all the other things by myself, so it wasn't really hard. Of course, he had said that he was going to give us some upkeep voluntarily, and he did it for 3 months and then stopped. I didn't pursue it because that is who he was before, and so there was nothing that I was going to change. I knew he was not going to keep his word on that, so I expected it to come up, and so it came up, and I didn't bother much, and that one went off. But you know, the worst part of co-parenting is the part whereby you have no control of this other person. You have no control of whether he's going to marry again. You have no control of his character. You have no control of his way that he's going to bring up these children. And you know, that is what we call a moment whereby you have no choice at all. And I remembered someone telling me, disdain what you cannot change. And that hit me hard, because this person moved on almost immediately. And so here I am co-parenting these children, and on holiday they have to go and visit their dad, and he has another wife. And it wasn't easy. I felt broken. I felt hurt. I felt like, I don't know, why did I have to bring up my children in such an environment? But you know what? I had no choice. That is what I had to disdain from something I can't change. And you know what? That's the reality. After divorce, you're free to do your life. And so you won't force this person to stay alone. And so my kids were there, and they have to visit their dad. And I know there are people who are back there listening, and you're like, if I am the one, I wouldn't allow my children to go. Yes. Yeah. I had those feelings. I had that advice. But you know, every time my children heard that dad is coming to pick us up this weekend, they felt excited. And when I saw the excitement in their eyes, I knew they desired to have a father. They desired to see their dad. And there's nothing I could do about it. I'm hurt, I'm paining, but my children may not understand it. They're too young to understand why. And the best I could do was to allow them see their dad. And that joy in their eyes made me happy. I mean, I also have a dad, and I'll be happy to see him anytime, any day, regardless. And you know, there are friends that I had, girlfriends that talked about their homes and their families and how their dads left and then came back. And you know, at the end of it all, they would tell me that they still talk with their dads, and I would like, what? You talk with your dad who left you and you talk to them? You know, I felt like I would beat them up, but it tells me how much there's a big bond between a child and a parent. And because the child was not in anger with the father, then there's nothing I can do. The best I can do is to nurture that relationship and give them room to love their dad and give myself room to love my children. And that gave me peace. But you know, the worst part of it is that your children are now in somebody else's house, in another woman's house, and you don't know how painful that is until you are in that position. And that's why we confess it, telling all the young girls, make right choices in life. Because the truth is, I may be testifying this to you, and it's the most painful part of my life, yet the consequences of wrong choices are very true, very vivid. They are so open, they cannot be hidden. These are the real consequences. And you know what? I just encourage myself and say, the Bible tells me that no weapon formed against me shall prosper. And that's what I do for my children. I raise them up to God. And I tell God, you know what? As they go, no weapon formed against them will prosper. No word spoken against their lives will stand. I cover them with a wall of fire. And that's the best prayer I do. And I leave the rest to God. And that's the most painful part of co-parenting.
I know there is also the good part of co-parenting. Yes, the good part. Because ultimately, the reason why you left is because you felt the environment was not good for bringing up my children. As for me, the environment felt not good at all. I remember I had a problem with him because he never used to be available most of the time. And he would call me up and tell me to tell the kids that please beg for me. I'm not going to be available this weekend. And one day I overheard my children. That time they were less than 7 years, and they said, I hope that D is not lying this weekend, that he's not coming. And that hit me really hard. I was like, what exactly does that mean? That I'm bringing up my children to grow up knowing that lying is a norm. And I felt it. It hit me hard. I was bringing up my children to know that people can be too busy for their families. Or they can actually be doing their own things and pretend to be busy. And for me, the best part of co-parenting, the good that it brought my way, is that the other person took up responsibilities of being present. I felt a whole shift of a person who was more present, more available for the children. He will be more available to pick them on holidays, more available to pick them on a weekend. And that, to me, that's what I want for my children. I want them to grow up knowing that as a father, you should be available for your family. And on my end, I wanted to bring up children with character. And it doesn't matter what they pick from the other end. I will do my part. Because the Bible is very clear. It says, bring up a child in the way of the Lord. And when they grow up, they will not depart from it. And that's a fact. It's a principle that will never change. So for me, I have an opportunity to teach my children all the good morals I envisioned to give them. Because in the environment of a marriage, those morals wouldn't have come up. Because I would be talking this, and the following day, someone is doing this, and they get confused. But when we are here, I'm with them, I instill those morals, and they watch me do what I say. And that to me is a plus for my children. The other good part of co-parenting is that whoever was not responsible, whoever was not available, all of a sudden turns out to be very much available. And you know, sometimes people don't change, but sometimes your walking away helps them to change. Unfortunately, is that you may not be able to look back. And that's the reality. So if you're watching me and you're just in your young moments of your marriage, take care of that marriage. Love your wife. Love your children. Being together as a family is something that you can't trade it off. I can promise you, it's not easy, but we have to strengthen ourselves and do it. Because at your time, we didn't heed to those small changes to make sure that we bring up our children in the right environment. And you know, it hurts me more, especially when you have to co-parent with that person who is not responsible. And most of the women take up all the responsibilities because the man decides to disappear. And you know, it's such a painful point. But I want to encourage you and remind you. I read a Bible verse in Isaiah, and it says, "Can a woman forget the child that she has bore?" And you know, it surprised me that indeed she can forget. And today we are living in a life whereby there are women who leave their children behind and disappear for good. There are men who also leave their children and disappear for good. But I want to encourage you. There's someone that will never leave you, nor forsake you. He says he's the father to the fatherless, the husband to the widow. You can cast all your cares on that man. That man is God. He is a true friend, closer than a brother. I can promise you, take up all your cares to him. Because sometimes there is nothing really we can do to force someone who refuses to be the father or the mother of a child. So, as I conclude on this episode, I want to encourage all of us. If you're that kind of person that wants to pull your children away from their father, just know you're denying them of their right for love, their right to know their father, their right. Let them discover who their father is by themselves. Unless he's so violent, unless you know that he's gonna kill them, then you have to protect them. But if he's not, then your children deserve to know their father. Because the truth is, none of us got our children like Mary. Yes, Mary in the Bible can explain, but the rest of us, there must have been a father figure that brought up that child. I know we're going to talk of these new technologies that have come up. Well, today I don't have a story or an argument on those technologies, but the truth is, at the end of the day, what God ordained was that there should be a father and a mother in any kind of relationship. So if you loved this episode, please share it with someone who is wondering, should I co-parent or should I not? Who is wondering, why did this man leave me and leave me with all the responsibilities? Let us remind them, there is God that is able to take up those responsibilities and make you stand. I believe in that God because I have seen Him work through for me. See you in our next episode, and remember to like, share, and subscribe. This is Life Notes with Peris. Until next time, remember to keep believing in yourself.